everyone, and welcome to Stay Tuned. My name is Ray Hotoda, and I'm the conductor and music director of the Fresno Philharmonic. And today we are so thrilled to have Grammy Award winning, fabulous composer, one of the most successful composers of our time, Joan Tower. Joan, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's so great to see you and to talk to you about your music. We just premiered in our digital Masterworks concerts your piece, Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman #1. Can you tell us a little bit about why you wrote the piece?
Well, this was 1986. I think that this was 34 years ago. My mathematics is right. And this composer, Tobias Picker, who's a wonderful composer, was in residence at the Houston Symphony. And he decided to commission a composer for every subscription concert to write a short fanfare to introduce the concert. It was a great idea. And so I jumped on it. Then I said, a fanfare. All I could think of was brass and trumpets and things like that. And then Copland's fanfare for the common man. And I thought, I'm going to do a tribute to Copland because he was one of my favorite composers, had a huge influence on me. And I'm going to use his instrumentation, and then I'm going to do a little snippet of from that piece. I'll just use in my own piece. And so I wrote this 3.5-minute piece, and it was just played at the inauguration, and it was paired with Copland's fanfare for the common man. Mine is fanfare for the uncommon woman. And it was for Joe Biden, and I got Kamala Harris. And it was a great honor to do that. And it's on YouTube under Classical Movements. It's a fantastic video. And they got these performers from all around the United States. They selected them from different orchestras. And it's an amazing video, really.
Well, it's an amazing work, and I love the title of it. But you wrote several of these fanfares for the Uncommon Woman.
I'm on 6. In fact, there might be a 7th in the works, but there are 6 that are existing. There's 2 for orchestra. One was dedicated to Joanne Falletta, which is number 4. Number 6 is for orchestra. And I'm still thinking about who that's going to be dedicated to. Number 1 is dedicated to Marin Alsop, who's a pioneering woman conductor. Number 2 is dedicated to Joan Brichetti, who was the general manager of the St. Louis Symphony, where I was a composer in residence. Number 3 was celebrating Carnegie Hall's 100th anniversary. And that's dedicated to Frances Richards, who was head of ASCAP for many years, a very incredibly strong woman. These are all very strong women. And that's for 2 brass quintets. The 4th one is for orchestra for Joanne Falletta. The 5th one was for 4 trumpets dedicated to Joan Harris, who is a philanthropist and who built this amazing hall in Aspen called the Harris Hall. At the Joan and Irving Harris Hall. And I conducted that. It was a very spiffy event. And I was a little nervous conducting 4 trumpets. And then number 6 is for orchestra again. It's an orchestration of a piano piece I wrote for the California Music Educators Association. It's a piano piece for teenagers. So I decided, Baltimore came along. Marin said, "Can you write a short piece?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to orchestrate this piece," and that's what it turned out to be. And yeah. So those are the stories.
I can't wait to conduct the rest of your fanfares.
Oh, great! They're terrific. We're going to have a large group of players.
Yes. But you know what I find so interesting about the fanfare, the #1, is that there's this amazing timpani solo that you don't hear. You don't hear that instrument as a solo instrument, but there are 2 measures where the timpanist, I know, kind of freaks out
I
because
know. The guy that did it at the inauguration, it was like he was doing it in his sleep.
wow,
Very fast. It's very fast, sticking,
right.
He did an amazing job.
It's such an amazing moment in the fanfare. So for those of you, please take a listen to our February 20th concert on our Fresno Phil YouTube page and our website and our Facebook page to take a listen to Joan's piece. But I want to continue talking about your influences and Copeland again being one of them. But there's another piece that I'd love to conduct sometime with the Fresno Phil. It's the Petrushkates. And so you have these composers that really affect the music that you write. Can you tell us a little bit about how that your process is, your compositional process?
Well, all composers live in a world of other composers and other music. So when you start out, you are probably living in some world that you're going to bring out in your music. So I grew up in South America, and I spent a lot of time with the Inca Indians, and we danced a lot, and I played percussion with them. So the element of rhythm came through during that time. My music is really rhythmically based more than anything else. So rhythm is a big part of my thinking. And then I was married to a jazz musician for 10 years, and we heard all the jazz greats in New York. But the harmonies, a lot of my harmonies are kind of quasi jazz based. And then I grew up as a pianist, and I was very much affected by Beethoven and Debussy and Chopin. And those three elements are coming into my music. So those are the influences that are coming from where I was growing up and engaged in as a pianist.
That's fantastic. And then I want to talk about a little bit about women composers in programs throughout the country of orchestra programs that feature women composers. And there was a 2018 interview that I read online where you mentioned that 5 out of 73 pieces on a program were women composers. And, the disparity of that and where are the women composers in these programs? And for me, and with the Fresno Philharmonic, I try to put a woman composer on each program, at least 3 or 4 times a season.
Right.
And in this program on February 20th that we broadcast, 3 out of the 4 composers are women composers.
Right.
So
terrific. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. When I was starting out in the orchestra world in the 80s, that's when I became composer in residence with St. Louis. There were very few women in the orchestra world being played. They just weren't there. But you have to put that inside the living composer because there were very few living composers even being played. So that was a small number. And then you add women to that, it gets even smaller. And so being in residence with St. Louis, I was lucky. I wound up with a conductor who loves composers, Leonard Slacken, who, he loves to explore composer, and he knows a lot of composers. He's probably one of the few conductors that knows all the composers somehow, and he just loves to do, living composers. It's something genuine with him. It's not a milk and magnesia thing like I should be doing. It's real genuine curiosity and love that he does it. So when he hired me as composer in residence with this fantastic program called Meet the Composer, where they placed composers in major orchestras around the country, it was the first time this had ever been done, and it was amazing. It completely changed the landscape. And I was very lucky to be one of those composers and wind up in St. Louis with Leonard. He asked for me, and I said, I had one orchestra piece, Sequoia, and I wrote him a letter, and I said, look, I am so honored and everything, but I'm really a beginner with orchestra writing, and I don't think you want to take this risk with me. And he said, you wrote one really good, interesting piece, and I'm going to help you write more. So
Wow.
please join us. See, that was the kind of attitude that one would want from a conductor. But the problem with some conductors is they're not always sure that what they like is going to be okay with the orchestra and with the audiences.
Right.
I have to stand alone with that choice. That's their choice. They choose that piece, and they have to believe in it. They have to say, okay, I'm going to convince the players that this is a good piece, and we got to show it the best we can. And I'm going to, hope that the audience loves it as much as we do. They have to take that kind of,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the programs that I do in Fresno with the Fresno Phil is always connecting it with, a staple in the repertoire too. Connecting these composers,
right.
living composers, with the staples of our repertoire. So also I want to ask you, what do you think the role of women composers are today? Like, post pandemic, in the pandemic included, but in general, what are your thoughts about
Well,
the
I
role?
mean, I'm old. I'm 82. Um, don't look it, of course.
Not at all.
You don't have to say anything. Um, I've been around the block a little bit in the orchestral world and in the other worlds too. And the growth has been phenomenal in terms of, first of all, more living composers per square foot, and then more women composers too. And I think after the At Me Too movement, things increased significantly in that regard. I got a ton of awards right after that year. It's like, why am I getting these awards now? The At Me Too movement made a huge difference, huge difference. And then the Black Lives Matter movement is making a significant difference for composers of color, and they're just all over the place. I was just talking to my friend Tanya Leon, who's um, around my age. She's also been around the block a long time, and she's just so busy keeping up with the Zooms and the performances. And I said, enjoy this time. It's your time. Enjoy it. It's not going to be forever.
Wow. Well, it's great. And is there something you'd like to share with young composers today?
I think in order not to be isolated, in order not to be rejected, my advice is to form your own group. And we have many examples of that among composers living today, where they form their own groups, and they do it in different ways. Some of them become the performer inside the group, which is what I did. I formed the capo chamber players, and I was the pianist. And at first I raised all the money and got all the, and I had to do all the outside work. After a while, the others started to help me. But that's one way. You become a player in the group, and you pick a group that's really motivated. That's tricky, how to pick the right group.
Right.
The other kind is you're the conductor of the group, and you decide what the program is going to be, maybe in consultation, maybe not, maybe the group is big. There are many of those. And then there are collectives. There are ones where there's one group called Common Sense Collective. It's no, it's not a California group. They're all over the place. They banded together. They're from Yale. They were graduates of Yale, and they decided that They wanted to be heard. So, or they wanted their music to be played. So what they did was they raised money to hire a group, like a string quartet, every year. And then they would go to an exotic, wonderful place like Banff, maybe in Canada or someplace in the South. And they'd bring this group with them. And that group would be responsible for playing and recording those pieces. And they'd be paid for that work. And they'd all spend a week or so together in this beautiful, wonderful place. That went on every year for several years. That was an amazing idea because it gave them a deadline, like, okay, I have to write this string quartet for April, and then I'm going to Banff, as my reward or whatever.
Right.
There are many, many ways of forming groups. You don't have to be the player. You don't have to be the conductor. You can be the presenter. But I really recommend that because you, as a young person, control your environment that way.
Mm-hmm.
You make your own musical choices, and you do it with friends and with people you start to bond with. They become like your family in a way. So that's what I always suggest.
That's great. And can I ask if you are working on a piece right now? Anything that you want to share with me?
Yeah, I'm always working on a piece. That's my life. I'm finishing up a cello concerto, actually,
Oh,
which is now being played by 4 orchestras. Elisa Wiley
wonderful.
is the cellist, and she's an amazing cellist. And
Yes, she is.
Peter Ujian is another conductor who loves composers, and he got this whole thing together. And so it's going to be premiered in Boulder, where he has a festival,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's going to Cleveland Orchestra, National Symphony, Detroit. Yeah, those 3 so far. So it's having a life already given, and of course I'm going to go off to Australia because I'm terrified that it may not work.
Do you get nervous when you have a premiere?
Are you kidding? I mean, not all composers go through what some do, what I go through. It's like you're an architect with an architectural blueprint, because that's what musical notation is. It's very specific notation. Unlike the other arts like dance and theater, they don't have that kind of notation. And you're putting this very specific thing in your soul into this very specific blueprint. It is like being an architect. And suddenly the building goes up. In music, it goes up within the hour. Of course, with architects, it takes a few months. But it's like you didn't see the building, and suddenly they say, okay, your building's ready. And you go there and you go, oh my God, those windows are too high. Jesus, what was I thinking? It's very scary. It's very scary. And it's also very intimidating because there are all these people sitting in front of you. You're like 100 people or maybe 40 people, even 40 people. And you're alone sitting there out with your little score. And they're reading. Miss Tower? Yes. In measure 64, is that a dot or a dash on the trumpet? The trumpet too. Did you say, I'm sorry, trumpet? Trumpet, sorry. Trumpet two. Never mind, we figured it out.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I would have never thought that you would feel that, intimidated by these conductors.
See, and the thing dealing with the conductor is another thing. Some conductors would prefer you were dead. So, well, they would, because they don't want your input. It's their job to make this piece come through, and you can just go away. Some are so used to dealing with dead composers that's the attitude. Others are like, okay, you can talk to me at the intermission, and I want your notes clearly written so I can understand what they say. Okay. Others are like, come on up stage, Joan, talk to the orchestra. This is Joan Tower, and
that would be me.
So I
No,
learned after many years to go to the conductor's lounge or wherever he is and say, okay, how do you want me to deal with this?
Mhm.
What's the plan? Do you want me to disappear? What do you want me to do?
Oh, how interesting. Wow. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Joan, for your time and your
Sure.
sharing your insight with us. It's just such a privilege for me to speak with you right now. So thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you
being,
for having me and good luck with the piece.
thank you so much. All
Uh,
right.
all right.
Take
Take care.
care.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you to our guest, Joan Tower, and thank you all so much for watching. Please watch our digital masterwork series on our Fresno Phil YouTube page, on Facebook, or our Fresno Phil website. So thank you all and stay safe.